Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
If you're a coach and you don't play the best players, you're not going to have the respect of your team, because they know who the best players are. They know who they have confidence in. They know who they trust and respect, that are going to go be able to be accountable to do their job. Can't lose sight of that.
And good evening. Welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV, along with Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. That was Nick Saban following the 8A game, Rodney, talking about, experience is a plus, but doesn't matter if, you're not playing better. We're going to play the best guys, regardless. And if you don't, the players will lose respect for you as a coach because they know who the best players are. Rodney, maybe we should have read between the lines because, I had been saying on my radio show and on Tider Insider TV that I thought Alabama was okay at quarterback. I didn't think they were going to add another quarterback. Boy, was I ever wrong. But just a few days after that 8A game, Alabama picked up a commitment from the transfer quarterback out of Notre Dame, Tyler Buchner. Buchner's decision reunites him with his offensive coordinator at Notre Dame and quarterbacks coach Tommy Rees, who, along with Brian Kelly, specifically targeted him as their #1 quarterback recruit in the class of 2021, signed him and got him to South Bend, where he started the season last year as the starter, got hurt against Marshall, sat out the final 10 games, came back and played in that bowl game, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl against South Carolina, and led his team to a dramatic victory, despite the fact that, he was hurt and his shoulder, and showed some toughness in his 2 seasons with the Irish. He's got a total of 13 touchdowns, 7 of which came on the ground. He doesn't have the Jalen Milroe type athleticism. Not many do, but he's very athletic. And he's also, a fairly accurate thrower. Rodney, you posted some thoughts on your quarterbacks at Alabama on Monday on TiderInsider.com. All of them, the total big picture. What do you think of this decision by Alabama, Nick Saban and Tommy Rees to bring in Buchner to add to the quarterback mix?
Well, again, I kind of thought the handwriting was on the wall after 8A when Nick Saban talked about, the quarterback still learning coverages and those types of things. And again, these are really 2 young quarterbacks, don't have a lot of experience when you're talking about Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. So it really did not surprise me that they looked in the portal if they could get the guy they wanted. Obviously, Tyler Buchner, the familiarity that he has with Tommy Rees, a guy that was, and you had a great interview on your radio show with Brandon Stone out of San Diego, who really described him as was a tremendous high school prospect. He is definitely one of the best high school quarterbacks I've seen on tape. Elusiveness, can throw on the run. A guy that's really talented. Gary, the thing that really hurt him at Notre Dame, I think, were the injuries that slowed him down. We talked about that on your radio show. He missed most of last season, only played in the first 2 games. Then he did not return, as you mentioned, till the bowl game. Was MVP in that game, accounted for 5 touchdowns. Yeah, he had some turnovers. There was a lot of rust. But I'll say this in real short, Gary. I think the one thing that Tyler Buchner brings that I like is some maturity.
Yeah. Well, we're watching some of his high school highlights, and you're right. Brandon Stone, sportscaster at KUSI in San Diego, has become a friend of mine. We started visiting back when Alabama played San Diego State in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and he told me that this is the best high school quarterback that he's ever seen. And you got to remember, he's covering a guy right now that's pretty good, Rodney, that's coming to Alabama.
Julian saying, a 5-star player. And again, Julian obviously has another year, but look, I think Tyler Buchner brings a lot of tools to this room, this quarterback room. It's going to be really interesting. How are you going to divide up those reps come August between these 3 guys?
All right, I don't want to get people too excited here, but I read your piece on TiderInsider.com. You compared him. You didn't say he was as good, but you compared Buchner to Tua.
Well,
in his his athleticism and his ability to maybe take some chances and make some plays. Again, I don't want to get carried away here, but you said it.
Yeah, I said he's a little bit of a risk taker like Tua. He may, try one of those little shovel passes when it's not called for. But listen, I really do think, Gary, when you look at him, it's his nimble feet. He's really quick on his feet. I think he's a guy that hasn't even started to scratch his potential. And I think coming here with Tommy Rees and with Nick Saban, he could certainly have he could certainly develop into a really good player.
And I want to say something a compliment to quarterbacks that are here now. Both the true freshmen, Lonergan and Holstein, because you got Julian Sayin coming in. You've got Milroe and Simpson returners battling for what they thought was the starting position between the 2 of them. You bring in another guy to compete, and nobody left. And, I think that tells you something about that room, especially Milroe and Simpson, and their desire to compete. Fans look at it automatically, one of them's going to leave. But you know how athletes are. They're saying to themselves, I can beat this guy out. I'm not going to just come in. He's not going to just come in here and take this job from me. They want to compete and have an opportunity.
No, I think you're right. But, again, and even when I looked at it, I'm thinking, okay, if you're Jalen Milroe and you're at the top of the pecking order, leaving spring, even though it's not really anything that's established, you got to be thinking, hey, if they go get a quarterback, what are they saying to me? Mm-hmm. But, again, I don't think he allowed that to bother him. He's decided to come back and challenge for the job.
It's always fun around here covering Alabama football. This fall camp coming up in a few months is going to be something else, right?
Very interesting.
It really, really is. All right, let's move on to some I guess disappointing news is the way to phrase it. Former Alabama star wide receiver and Las Vegas Raiders first-round NFL draft pick Henry Ruggs III is set to enter a guilty plea for 2 charges related to the 2021 deadly car crash in Las Vegas. Ruggs unconditionally waived the right to a preliminary hearing Tuesday, and his attorney said that he'll plead guilty to 1 count of DUI resulting in death and 1 count of misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter. According to a plea agreement presented in court, the 24-year-old Ruggs will serve 3 to 10 years in a Nevada state prison. All right, another former Alabama wide receiver. Some really positive news to report. John Metchie missed the entirety of his rookie season with the Houston Texans, and Rodney, and not for just a little thing. How about leukemia? Last July, diagnosed with it. Many thought that he might not ever play football again. Here he is, back working out with the Texans, taking part in off-season workouts. Quick word on John Metchie, Rodney. We covered him here at Alabama. Great football player, but what a high-character individual. And it's one thing to have an injury. When you're told you got leukemia, and you come back from that, how cool is that?
Yeah, look, not only, Gary, is he very physically tough, obviously he's very mentally tough. I mean, this guy's one of the been one of the standout players here that's come through here as a receiver, and it's really a good story. And hopefully he gets on track in the NFL.
He's going to have some Bama buddies with him. Yep. D'Amico Rhodes is the head coach. He's already got Christian Harris out there. Will Anderson III, we'll talk more about him. Henry To'oTo'o, all coming to play for the Houston Texans. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Montana Fouts earns another SEC honor. Find out what we're talking about next. Also, the Crimson Tide had 10 football players, as we alluded to, go in the NFL draft. Who went where and more coming up. Plus, we'll get to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, that phone number, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us. We love those emails, folks. I know sometimes we don't get to them until the next week, but we do love them. TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And welcome back to TITV, brought to you by our good friends at Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Man, they do some great work for us here in West Alabama, so support Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. With Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. The NFL Draft has become a recruiting tool for Nick Saban in Alabama. Since 2010, Alabama has had multiple players selected in the top 50 picks every year. Rodney, also 15 consecutive years with a first-rounder. That's the all-time record. Let's get to it. It was another recruiting video for Alabama, including history. Bryce Young becomes the first Alabama player selected number 1 overall in the Common Draft, Modern Draft era. That's Common Draft 67, Modern Draft 1970. There's Will Anderson III going number 3 overall to the Texans, Bryce to the Panthers, and, of course, running backs are supposed to not have as much value, but Jahmyr Gibbs, he didn't tell you otherwise. He went number 12 overall to the Detroit Lions. There was one kind of minor disappointment. I think most of us felt like Brian Branch, Rodney, would go in the first round, the defensive back. But you know what? He's not a test guy. He didn't blow anybody away at the combine. And I tell you, he showed his character, staying around for the second day. Most of those guys that didn't get picked go home. He stayed there. I think the Detroit Lions got a steal with him in the second round. Alabama had 8 players selected in the first 3 rounds. That's the most. They had 10 total. That ties Georgia. And, had other picks, Tyler Steen to the Eagles, Byron Young to the Raiders, Jordan Battle to the Bengals, Cameron Latou to the 49ers, Henry To'oTo'o to the Texans, DeMarco Helms to the Falcons. Alabama, as I said, tied with Georgia for the most players drafted in the 2023 draft. And listen, you and I have discussed this at length. People come to Alabama, players come down, they want to win. They want to compete for championships. They want to get a degree. But ultimately, most of these guys that Alabama recruits, they want to get to the NFL. So all the things that are done here that are positive, that might carry more weight with recruits than anything else.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever spoken to a recruit who didn't mention the potential of going to the NFL, as Alabama being one of the reasons that they were considering coming here. And you know what, Gary, once again, 3 of the top 12 picks, as you mentioned. You know, one of the ones that I find really interesting is Toa going to Houston.
Work with D'Amico.
With D'Amico, inside linebacker. Look, I think Henry Toa has a chance to have a good career.
And for Bryce, you know, we just look at the recent quarterback history. You know, for a long time, as Alabama can't produce a quarterback. You know, A.J. played a long time as a backup. He's lighting up in the XFL. Jalen Hurts, mega contract. Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. But nobody had ever been the #1 overall pick. And it's Bryce Young. He was the first quarterback to win a Heisman here. He's the first to be the #1 overall pick. Those guys are incredible, all of them. But he made some history coming behind some guys who really were great players.
Yeah, he did. And again, I know a lot of people talk about, well, he didn't win a national championship. Well, you know, he did have one his freshman year when obviously Mac Jones was a starter. He was a part of 2 SEC championship teams. He won a Heisman Trophy. Bona fide All-American, consensus All-American, all the honors that he got, Gary. I mean, look, he may be the most decorated player in school history.
And Carolina's got a chance to win their division. And he's probably going to be a day 1 starter. So another Alabama quarterback to watch on Sundays. All right, Ronnie, staying with the draft, it's time for Coach Talk. D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans made a splash on draft night. Now, the Texans went ahead and got their quarterback at number 2 with C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. There was a lot of talk they might take Will Anderson at 2. They didn't, but they traded up to number 3, sending the Arizona Cardinals 4 draft picks, including 2 first-rounders, for the right to draft the Alabama edge rusher, Will Anderson Jr. For Ryans, who's a former Alabama linebacker himself, as we talked about, the move up to take Will Anderson was a no-brainer.
I probably watched him for a long time now, seeing a few of his games, but just seeing, again, the fierce competitor that he is. Every time watching Alabama, when they needed a play on defense, it was 31. That was the guy stepping up, making a play.
And Will Anderson made a statement at the draft, Rodney, in that blue pinstripe suit. He had a chain that featured 2 sides, the first being the face of the Terminator, the nickname he earned during his time at Alabama. The other side was his last name. Photos of Anderson's grandmother were inside his jacket. His grandma, Betty, passed away back in 2020, and he shared the special connection of football with his grandmother. And also, he's all about family. You know, those 5 sisters, Rodney, all older than him. His mom and dad, very involved in his life. And, you know, that's another thing. When you're going to invest in some of these guys this high in the draft, yes, you're looking for great players, but you're also looking for great people. And I think Will Anderson Jr. marks off both boxes.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about character, I mean, there probably isn't anyone in the draft that has higher character than him. And his work ethic, Gary, we know about that. I mean, this guy is I think he's a can't-miss prospect.
And as you said, I also added in Henry Toa, the linebacker, to go along with Christian Harris and John Metchie. We see a lot of teams, because Alabama's got more players in the NFL than any other school, that have strong Alabama flavors. But now with D'Amico Ryans as the head coach, you know, he's going to try to get the best players he can, period. But you better believe if it comes down to a couple guys and one's an Alabama player and they're similar and one guy's not, he's probably going to take the Bama guy.
He might. There's no question about that. But, you know, again, I think I'm really glad to see those guys get in Houston, Gary. I think the Raiders, too, taking Byron Young.
Yeah, solid player.
Yeah, I think Byron's got a chance to have a really good career.
I do, too. All right, let's move on, and we're going to talk some softball. For the 4th time this season, Alabama senior Montana Fouts earned weekly accolades from the Southeastern Conference, sharing SEC Softball Co-Pitcher of the Week honors. This is the 4th time this season. That ties her season best record from 2 years ago in 2021. The Grayson, Kentucky native helped guide Alabama to a series win over then number 13 LSU last weekend with a pair of complete game shutouts on Friday night and again on Sunday. She is, in a word, special. Alabama baseball, though, was on a little bit of a roll. They'd won 5 SEC games in a row. You know, against LSU, Rodney, they scored a lot of runs. They were in every one of these games. They even fought back from being down big on Friday night and had a chance to tie that game up in the 9th inning. But you know what? You don't get any extra points for close, and they got swept. And as I've said to you many times, we've talked about Alabama's a good team. But in this league, there's good, and then there is the creme de la creme. Being good oftentimes isn't good enough, and that was the case this past weekend.
You know, on the one hand, it's really encouraging the way they competed. But as you mentioned, Gary, I mean, it's all about winning. And you know, the pitching just didn't hold up when they had the big leads.
And it's not going to get any easier. Vanderbilt comes in here for a 3-game series beginning Thursday night at the Joe. Well, coming up next, we're going to welcome your phone calls and emails and your tweets, too. You can still tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV or just tweet at me or Stu or somebody, and we'll get to it. But there's the phone number, as always, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. There's the email address, TITV@WVUA23.com. Let's hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. I know you got some thoughts on these quarterbacks. We'll be back right after this. Alabama women's basketball picking up a commit for the class of 2024. Chloe Spreen from Bedford North Lawrence High School in Indiana, 19 points, 5.3 rebounds, 3.2 assists last season, and a state championship, and was named Max Prep's Indiana Player of the Year. She had multiple offers. I mean, she visited all the women's basketball powerhouses in the country, but she decided she wants to roll with the Tide. That is a nice pickup for Christy Curry and company. Welcome back into Tider Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's jump out on the phone lines, and Jeff is with us to lead us off tonight over in Birmingham. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Gary. Hey, Rodney. Hope y'all are doing well.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just interested in Kristen Story, the great player that was recruited a couple of years ago, and just wanted to see what you all's take on him is if he factors into Alabama's plans this year, or if he's for some reason not in the plans.
All right, Jeff, good question. And I'm like you, very curious about Kristen Story. This seemed to be the spring, Rodney, to me, that he made his move. Mm-hmm. He played a lot in the 8A game and seems like he is going to have a chance to be in the playing rotation in the secondary this fall.
Yeah, definitely. I think certainly he is. And, guy made an interception, obviously, in the 8A game. I think, he's competing back there at the safety spot. He's in some of the various packages that they use. I expect Kristen Story to be on the field.
All right. Thanks for the phone call, Jeff. Let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. For all your heating and air conditioning needs, it's KDM Service Corporation. Why take another quarterback and mess up the team chemistry? That's from Sam in Tuscaloosa. It's a fair question, Sam. I mean, it really is, from the outside looking in. I think Rodney and I discussed this a lot already. I don't think that's the way that Nick Saban sees this at all. If you're afraid of competition, first of all, Rodney, you're probably not at Alabama. So I don't think they're looking at it like that. I think they're looking that he's going to, come in here and fit in, compete. Quarterbacks compete with each other, but they also support each other. It's an unusual fraternity, Rodney, and I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier, I think Tyler Buchner's a really mature kid. Look, when he was at Notre Dame, they brought in a transfer. Sam Hartman, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And, the word from Notre Dame is Tyler Buchner did everything he could to help Hartman learn the offense this spring. I mean, he's a team guy. I think he'll fit in really, really well. And, look, it's a different day. You're going to have guys transferring in now, Gary, with that portal. So I really don't think it's necessarily going to be anything that's going to upset the chemistry.
All right. Still to come on Tider Insider Television, a former Crimson Tide player earns USFL honors, only 3 weeks in his return to the league. And more phone calls are on the way. And listen, phone calls, I'm told, are open. Phone lines are open, I should say, at 205-348-9882. So if you want to get through, go ahead and give us a ring. We want to hear from you. And TITV continues right after this timeout. All right, here's a cool story. Former Alabama linebacker Reuben Foster won the USFL Defensive Player of the Week for Week 3. The Maulers' 21-13 victory over the Stars on Sunday. And, Ferrari had a game. He led Pittsburgh with 11 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 1 broken pass. I tell you this, Rodney, if his knees sound, I mean, this guy can play. I mean, he's fit. Don't be shocked if he gets another crack in the NFL. I certainly hope that he does. All right, welcome back into TITV. We're going to jump right back out on the phone lines, and BT is with us right here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, BT.
Hi, Gary Harris. How are you?
Doing well, my friend.
I'm good, Rodney and Gary. What I want to ask you is, do you think that new guy from they bringing in, he going to be the starter, or
Yeah, BT, he'll have to compete. I'll say this. They brought him in for a reason, and since you asked the question, I'm comfortable answering it. If you're asking me to make a prediction on who I think will start the first game in September, I think it'll be Tyler Buchner. I think that's why they brought him in. He'll have to earn it, but I think he's got the inside track, in my opinion, Rodney.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad assessment at all, Gary. Again, you never really know how a guy's going to make an adjustment when he makes a transfer. But, again, he's coming in. He'll be here, probably in June, go through the summer workouts, go through August camp, obviously. And you know what? We probably won't know till that first Monday, right before the Middle Tennessee State game, who's going to be the starter.
All right, good call, BT. Let's go down to Daphne and talk with Bob. Hey, Bob, good evening.
Fine. Enjoyed the program, fellas.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. We have a young man from Georgia. I think his name was Pope, and I understand he kind of lit it up in the spring game. What are you hearing about him?
All right, Bob's breaking up.
Jake Pope.
Okay, Jake Pope.
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm glad you heard it. You go ahead.
He had a really good spring, Bob. I think he had a couple of really good scrimmages. He's made a really big hit in the 8A. You remember that, Gary? Made a lot of video, went viral on the internet. Jake Pope's a really good player, redshirt freshman. I'd be for Georgia.
I thought, all those defensive backs looked good in that game. I saw a lot of guys. I think Alabama's going to be fine in the secondary. All right, we got an email, Rodney. Let's get to that before we go to the break. This is from Emily in Hoover. Is Brandon Miller still in school at Alabama? Of course, a great basketball player, going to be a top 5 pick. To answer your question, Emily, I'm not sure. My guess is, and this is just a guess, I don't know. He's probably preparing for the NBA draft full time, and my guess is because that's what he is getting ready for, and that's his plan. I doubt very seriously that he's in school, but I don't know that for sure, Rodney.
No, I haven't heard either, Gary, and I'm like you, though. I would suspect that he's not.
Yeah, he's getting ready to make a lot of money in the NBA. All right, thanks for the phone calls and the emails. Still to come, Aaron Rodgers shows his respect to a fellow Jets quarterback by the name of Broadway Joe. And we will be right back on this beautiful, boy, what a gorgeous evening in Tuscaloosa on the University of Alabama campus right after this.
There's some iconic names that have played here, probably none more iconic than number 12. I heard what he said about unretiring his number, but to me, 12 is Broadway Joe.
That's new Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers explaining why he decided to wear number 8, his college number at Cal, instead of the number 12 that he wore for so many years with the Green Bay Packers. Broadway Joe Namath, former Alabama great, gave Rodgers his blessing to bring number 12 out of retirement, but I think that's awesome for Aaron Rodgers to do that. Hey, let's be honest. Joe Namath wants to see the Jets win another Super Bowl, but until somebody does, he is and will always be the most iconic quarterback in Jets history, and maybe Rodgers is the guy.
Yeah, I'm not really sure anybody can surpass Joe. I watched the '69 Super Bowl. Were you old enough?
I don't remember. I've watched it back on YouTube.
Don Maynard, Matt Snell, Emerson Boozer, a lot of great players.
Yeah, I don't remember it live, but I've watched it back many times. All right, that's going to do it for TI TV. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Good night, everybody.